okay, Nike puts up a BLM inspired shoe, is Nike gonna pay the black women who make in the sweatshops a fair wage? Again, yeah, I'm no stranger to the state forces trying to discipline me or trying to gather intel. The primary source of oppression affecting black people are the material conditions of existence. The fate of African people and African descended people, no matter where they are, will always be connected to how the continent is doing.
Welcome back to the Knowledge Chronicles series. In this episode, I sit down with Momodou Taal, who's a guerrilla intellect and also the host of the Malcolm Effect podcast. We explored what Pan-Africanism is, the role of Islam, and why we should root our organising through an internationalist lens. I left this conversation feeling like we must mobilise, we must organise, and also move knowledge back to its radical roots. Thank you so much, Momodou, for joining the Knowledge Chronicles. It's an honor to be in conversation with you. I know I've listened and studied the work that you've done. For people who don't know you, or this is the first time they're hearing your name, could you just share a little bit of who you are and the work that you do?
My name is Momodou Taal. I am a PhD candidate in Africana Studies at Cornell University. My work broadly focuses on questions of sovereignty, particularly how West African economies try to develop post-independence. I'm host of the Malcolm Effect podcast. I'm one of the founders of Voxuma, and I'm an author of the Malcolm Effect Revisited. Mm-hmm. But I think broadly, I like to position myself as a public intellectual, first and foremost, because I think this moment requires clarity, and clarity of thought, clarity of principle. And that for me, I'm trying to embody that and say, okay, hang on a minute. You see the kind of grotesque wealth inequality in society, right? You see that we know that race is not biological, but still it persists as real, for example, right? So what is it? How do we come to understand these things, right? And I think, unfortunately, dominant frameworks exist in the mainstream, are very liberal, very defanged, and they are disciplining us to be better, what I call the neoliberal subject. Yeah. Right? And I think, how do we kind of undo that? How do we kind of, I guess, reverse that brainwashing and actually empower people to think, okay, no, capitalism is not the only way. Yep. Right? The end of history did not take place in the 90s, right? Yeah. As America claims it did. Yeah. So yeah, my work is broadly trying to educate people. Yeah, it's needed in a time where we are becoming depoliticized and de-radicalized. Could you speak a little bit about what happened to you entering the belly of the beast, the heart of empire, and the violence that comes with being very much with political clarity? Yeah, you mean on this occasion? Or? This occasion, yeah, this occasion, and all of the occasions that happened. Again, yeah, I'm no stranger to, I guess, the state forces trying to discipline me or trying to gather intel. But on this occasion, I arrived back to the UK 2 days ago, and I was detained under Schedule 7 of the 2000 Terrorism Act for 6 hours, which is the legal limit, I'm told. All my devices were taken. But again, the questions which I had anticipated, I thought they would be far more political, but they weren't. They were like, who do you listen to growing up? Would you call yourself devout Muslim? How many times a day do you pray? What mosque do you go to? Oh, and one question was very interesting. Well, I say interesting, but they were like, what do you think is the cause of a rising Islamophobia? Ooh. So I was like, where are you going with this question, right? Another question they asked was, do you think October the 7th was a conspiracy theorist by Israel? Okay. So, but again, I think, I say this is not my first rodeo. So I think you answer, again, on the Schedule 7, you don't have the right to remain silent. Yep. Right? But how you answer the questions is up to you. Yeah. So I guess, I mean, it's frustrating, it's annoying, it's kind of making me rethink where I position myself and travels in the future. Yeah. But again, most importantly, I'm safe. Which is really important. And with how imperialism operates and with how Britain operates and the West, this attempt of state surveillance and state repression is there to silence intellectuals, revolutionary movements and organizations. And we've seen it with Britain where they've prescribed particular organizations who've resisted them.
what has given you, like, is there like a revolutionary organization, a revolutionary movement, or a revolutionary leader that gives you hope and that gives you that steadfastness?
I think historically, I'm someone that's like, I position myself very much on the left. I position myself as a Marxist, a Marxist-Leninist, to be exact. So I guess within that, I'm very much a fan, or not, I won't say fan. I do draw inspiration from like the Black Panthers, for example.
Yep.
Because I think, and it's interesting, we can talk about the ways in which radical aesthetics become appropriated.
Yep.
And then all that's left is the beret and the leather jacket and perhaps the rifle.
Yeah.
But the politics has been completely removed. So for example, we know the Black Panthers, like they were a Marxist-Leninist Maoist organization.
Yep.
Right? They were a Maoist organization, right? I think Black Panthers, for me, I draw inspiration because of their young leadership, right? Fred Hampton's 21 when he was killed.
Yep.
Right, becomes leader at 18, 19. So yeah, so I think, and then obviously for me, Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Malcolm X is he's my North Star, right? I think what I always say, what Malcolm X did for me personally, when I would experience racism, when I would try to understand blackness, right? Why is it that I can seemingly, what I understand viscerally, Malcolm gave me the language to understand that, right? And that autobiography is life-changing. And, you know, it's a coming-of-age story, right? Every young black young man at some point reads that autobiography and then has their Muslim face, right?
Yeah.
So I think those kind of, I kind of situate myself in that camp.
Yeah. I've sent a lot of people who I know who are incarcerated the Malcolm X book. And there's that moment of like actually connecting the dots between the prison industrial complex and also the state and the violence that you go through as a black person, as a black man, that like renders you as like supplement and renders you as someone that is not deserving of love, that is not deserving of care.
Exactly.
When was the first time that you heard of Malcolm X?
This is a very personal story actually. I think growing up in like an experience in so much colorism, there was like an insecurity I had. And I'll never forget, like, you know, I'm showing my age here, but YouTube was just new at this time, right? And YouTube was new, and I remember listening to Malcolm's speech, who taught me to hate this?
Who taught you, please, who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
And that was like, I was like, why do I, whether I like to admit, but why is it what is stereotypically seen as phenotypically African features that I don't like, right? And that was the beginning of like kind of my undoing. And also it's interesting because completely two different figures, but I embraced Malcolm X same time I embraced Barack Obama.
Okay.
Right? Because it was also the election time.
Yeah.
Right, obviously I can't stand that man.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
I can't stand that man now.
An imperialist leader.
But, you know, I think there was a time of like, oh wow, like a black person can do this, right? And again, it's not our fault because I think Obama positioned himself as a radical, right? Which is not. But yeah, I think that's the first time I heard Malcolm X. And then at 16, I was gifted his autobiography. Malcolm X is a revolutionary from the United States of America. He starts out in the Nation of Islam and later embraces a kind of orthodox position later on. But I think fundamentally, he is someone that embodies the best of what our faith teaches us, which is when I think of like the definition descriptions of like prophets, right? Or friends of God, we understand this concept of friends of Allah. I find that Malcolm X is the perfect embodiment of that because he was willing and he did give his life for the betterment of his people, right? He was unwavering in his principles, right? And this is someone I think as a role model, I can't think of a better role model for so many people in this time. In a time where people often capitulate over any issue, standing firm and being principled is the task, right? And I think Malcolm X embodies that. And I think for me, when I went to upstate New York for the first time and I saw his headstone from 1925 to 1965, I was like, oh wow, he has been under the ground longer than he was ever on the ground. But just a mere mention of his name, just a mere witnessing of his image invokes such a kind of reaction, or it spurs people on to make revolutionary change, right? And that's what Malcolm X is to me. And I think, again, we can talk about his like politics and Pan-Africanism, etc.
You spoke about Pan-Africanism. What is Pan-Africanism?
Yeah, so Pan-Africanism, you'll get as many definitions as they are people. Broadly, it is an understanding of what does it mean to be African and descending from Africa. For me, again, I draw and I accept and I invoke the definitions provided by Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Kwame Touré, formerly Stokely Carmichael, in which they say that Pan-Africanism is the total unification and liberation of Africa under scientific socialism. And that part of under scientific socialism is very important because we're saying that whilst celebrations of culture are absolutely important, whilst things like the way you dress and change your name are also important, and when thinking about creating an identity that's not rooted in whiteness, however, we cannot divorce it from a political objective.
Yeah.
It's an understanding that the fate of African people and African descended people, no matter where they are, will always be connected to how the continent is doing.
Definitely.
It's also a recognition that when you look at colonial economies, why is it that like Ghana produces such cocoa, for example? Why is it that we have enough rice in West Africa, in the Casamas region, to feed the whole of West Africa, but every country is producing rice? It's because post-colonialism, which Nkrumah has, neo-colonialism, the final stage of imperialism, where he says that our countries have been balkanized in such a way that unless development becomes impossible, unless we unite as a bloc, at least regionally, if not continentally.
Yeah. You spoke about a lot of these like revolutionary leaders. We see with Lumumba, we saw with Thomas Sankara, about their political journeys constantly changing. And we also have seen Pan-Africanism evolve. So what is this involvement with Pan-Africanism today against imperialism? Like, could you speak a little bit about Pan-Africanism right now today in the 21st century?
Good question. I think, so right now we can talk about the alliance of Sahelian states. That is Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso. And the figurehead that has emerged, which we call he's embracing that Sankarian spirit, right, is Ibrahim Traore. And I think so far they've made amazing moves. I think they've correctly identified enemies. One being French imperialism and the second being elites, our local elites. Right, and I think that trajectory is so far so good. I would always say for me at this moment, I am cautiously optimistic. And I think a bit of caution is good, because I think oftentimes, fundamentally, the military will always have a limitation. And this was the task of Sankara. Will you be able to transform a military coup into a popular movement? And I'm still waiting to see that. But so far, he's loved by his people, Ibrahim Traore. And they're making good moves, like the AES passport, withdrawing from ECOWAS, for example, which is the Economic Community of West African States. The banking system, the kind of passports. So I think, and the free trade agreements, list goes on. So but again, how does that connect to Pan-Africanism? It's saying that these artificial borders are hindering our development as a people. So we have to abolish these colonial borders and unite at least as a regional bloc. And if you want to talk to us as a regional bloc. Because again, oftentimes people talk about, oh, you're kicking out the French, etc. But you never hear this part where France and NATO and United States bombed Libya. And all those weapons became awash in the Sahel region, which spurred on and fueled terrorism. And this is what these military leaders are responding to, right? So that history is not told, right? And that's like, for me, Pan-Africanism is that like unifying factor between so many different peoples.
It's really important to connect that, right? Like Pan-Africanism being like a political actor, like liberate Africa. You spoke about scientific socialism and also you being a Marxist-Leninist. Also, I'm a Marxist-Leninist, which is important. Also, when we speak about Marxist-Lenin, it talks about imperialism being the primary contradiction. What is the connection between Pan-Africanism and anti-imperialism?
Great questions. Okay, this is cool. Cool. I think Pan-Africanism fundamentally is anti-imperialist. Right? Because again, when we say imperialism is the primary contradiction, what do we mean by that? We hear, when you're on the left, right, you hear all these buzzwords, imperialism, anti-imperialism, what does that mean? But when we're saying that right now, imperialism has developed into a stage in which the United States of America, through use of its dollar, through use of sanctions, through use of military industrial complex, they are able to subject states, and they deny state sovereignty, right? So like, for example, you can be granted a kind of quasi-sovereignty, like Saudi Arabia, for example, and other countries, but are you able to make your true decisions? So fundamentally, imperialism says that the economies and developments of countries, particularly in the global south, are not made by local leadership. The dictates come from Washington, IMF, structural adjustment programs, etc., right? How does it relate to Pan-Africanism? And I think it's really important that we double down on Pan-Africanism being anti-imperialism, because it's very easy to be anti-racist, right? It's very easy to be
and
anti-racist.
also a lot of funding. That comes
Exactly,
with it.
right? You know, let me not be shady. I can say some names here.
So also,
Like, you know, Ibrahim X. Kendi. How to be anti-racist, baby. But anyway.
Also, we saw after 2020, like all of this label, and you spoke about the aesthetics of like anti-racism rather than actually being like, no, we need to be anti-imperialist.
You wasn't supporting KFC and the chicken and and the beef. Again, it's like corporation can be anti-racist, right? What is it? It's nothing. But the real question is, okay, Nike puts up a BLM-inspired shoe. Is Nike going to pay the black women who make in the sweatshops a fair wage? That's a question that I'm more concerned with, right? I don't care about the aesthetics or cultural representation, right? But for me, again, it's like, it's easy to be anti-racist, but is it easy to be anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist? Because again, for me, I hold this to be true. The primary source of oppression affecting black people are the material conditions of existence. It's not to say that's the only source of oppression, but the primary source of oppression. So I think, but we're dealing with that question of like political economy. And again, it's not an economic reductionism. Like, again, this word economics is actually bourgeois. You never find that in Marx. You find political economy, because there's not a distinction between politics and economics. Right?
With Pan-Africanism and talking about how Pan-Africanism has evolved today, what is the duty for Africans in the imperial core? So like, we speak about like Pan-Africanism and uniting Africa against like imperialism and Western domination. So people who are in the imperial core, in the heart of empire, in the belly of the beast, like what is their role in Pan-Africanism?
I think fundamentally the first role is to like unite as a people in the imperial core, right? I think we all see the diaspora wars and stuff, and they're a bit funny and sometimes most often useless. But I think fundamentally, I think it's first comes the realization your liberation will never be sought through a Western state. Right? No matter how much they dress up United States or the UK and citizenship, etc., we've learned quite clearly your citizenship as a person of color is contingent, it's conditional. It's not guaranteed. Right? So I think when we accept that, you will find yourself like you are closer to becoming homeless and poor than you are ever becoming a millionaire or billionaire. Right? So what does that mean? It means that you have more in common with people in the global south than you do with people in the global north in the top 1%. So once that realization takes place, how do we organize around that? And again, I would say I'm very wary of telling people how to organize in particular places, because I know everyone has their own communities, but I think broadly what we need is a raising of consciousness first and foremost. And then secondly, we should be supporting Pan-Africanist movements on the continent. Right? We should be taking people to look, what does it look like to have, I guess, sovereign development programs? And what lessons can we learn from Burkina Faso? What lessons can we learn from these other organizations as well?
What I've witnessed of your work over the years is this role of like actually talking about Pan-Africanism, but also again with this like political clarity. And we spoke about like the state repression that comes with it. You was in America. You was in Cornell University.
It feels like a lifetime away.
But especially in the last couple of years, when we see a rise of like the Palestinian resistance, we've seen like also the resistance in the global south. He was very vocal in speaking against Western domination with the Malcolm Effect podcast, with Voxuma, and also you being like a student at the time and also an academic. You face state repression. Could you speak a little bit about your experience in Cornell?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a long story, but just, and I've spoken about this at length, but to kind of give the summary, I attended a protest in September 2024, in which there was a recruitment fair, and amongst the participants were, or recruiters, was Boeing and L3 Harris, which was two identified companies for our divestment target. I went to the protest, I was there for 5 minutes, it got shut down. Cornell threatened to suspend me for that protest. Then I just tweeted about it. That tweet blew up. Then whilst that kept me safe, because these universities, the only thing we found is their Achilles heel is bad press.
Yeah.
Nothing else works. So whilst that kept me as a student, and I'm still getting my PhD at the moment, they kind of like had some draconian measures. Like I lived on campus and they drew a map of where I am allowed to go on campus. So I was given a form of persona non grata. And they even said to me, you have to get permission to go to the medical center every time you call in, which I obviously said no. I asked to get 5 daily prayers. They said, no, we're gonna give you 1 on Jummah. And they said that where I lived on campus, they said that you can go out your house and turn left, but you can't turn right. Right, and I think it's interesting because notions of carcerality don't just stop at like the airport or stop at physical borders. We imbibe them and reproduce its logics all over campuses, right? So then I was like, okay, cool. Then December 2024, a right-wing organization called Beitar, they're like a right-wing Zionist group. They compiled a list of faculty and students to give to Trump on day 1 to deport. And the New York Post reported that in 2024, December. And I was the only one named in the article. So at that moment, I was like, I think my time in the US is coming to come to a close soon. And I was prepared anyway.
Yeah.
And then Trump becomes elected, January 20th, I believe. And then he vows to seek out international students who are anti-Semitic for deportation. At that point, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a target. So then we saw Mahmoud Khalil get taken up.
Yeah.
Rumeysa Ozturk, so many other students. And then my lawyer said to me, listen, there's no doubt you're going to be targeted. You have 1 or 2 options. You lay low and hopefully they don't find you and you just finish this year out and then leave and then write your dissertation, which is it's never in my nature to lay low. Or you can sue the president and you will be seeking a national injunction for every single international student in the country to protect them. And I said, of course, that's like a no-brainer. Like that's a no-brainer.
Of course, yeah.
But again, no-brainer, and then all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
I filed a lawsuit on a Friday, and we're sitting with my legal team. It's like a good 7 of us, and we're like, you'll feel good about this. Great. I get a call. I won't say who, but I get a call saying that, oh, by the way, the FBI and ICE are coming for you right now. This is within like 6 hours of me filing the lawsuit. So I'm like, oh shit.
That feeling of you're going to have ISIS and the FBI, and we also know the violence that comes with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what do I do at this point now?
Yeah.
Right. And then as you can imagine, I'm hearing so much, just leave, get out of there. I'm like, haven't even been to court yet, right? I haven't had my day in court. Because obviously under normal circumstances, you'd have your first hearing, you lose or win. If you lose, you go to appeal, or then the government might appeal. That goes to the 9th Circuit, which is a panel of 3 judges. And then you might win or lose that. And then you go to Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court declares what the law of the land is. That's what I thought was going to happen. But my naivete.
And we also we also know the criminal legal system is not there to benefit the masses, right? And the people.
100%.
It's there to benefit imperialism. And we saw that happen to you. But
Absolutely.
what happened after you
So I go into hiding for 2.5 weeks. It was Ramadan, and I always say this half jokingly. It was in that moment I realized I can't go to jail. Like I was in a
to be
box.
honest, you're like in a cage.
I was in a box room, no windows for 2.5 weeks. I lost my appetite even though I was fasting. And I was like, crap, like this is terrible. Then we had our first hearing. It was a Biden appointee judge, recent to the bench, doesn't make a difference. She said that whilst you have a lot of good First Amendment claims, she doesn't understand why you can't fight this case from being in jail. But what's interesting about that is the government's position was that this is not retaliation against the lawsuit. We had decided to revoke his visa on a random Friday in March for a protest you attended in September. That was the government's position. And they had an affidavit signed by an ICE agent.
Yeah.
Right? So then after I filed the lawsuit, I think on like a Wednesday afterwards, my lawyers get an email demanding that they surrender me to ICE custody. And we said,
Absolutely not.
We said,
We're not handing ourselves to the state.
You're like, come on.
Yeah.
And then after that, Friday, I get notice of my visa being revoked. A week later, the lawsuit. After the lawsuit. And then after we lost the first hearing, we then filed the habeas corpus, which means if I'm taken by ICE, I will be subjected to New York state laws, because as is the case, they take it to Louisiana, right? And again, it's like, it's surreal, right? Because I had my lawyers instruct me to make a video saying that if you're watching this video, I'm in jail, right? And my lawyer's telling me sleep with any numbers you need in your pocket. My lawyer's telling me sleep with any medications. The person who's staying with me had to be briefed that when ICE come, don't like interrupt them, record and ask where you're taking him. And again, it's kind of like, traumatic. Like I'm at nighttime, I hear a loud bang, and like, they're here, right? So after 2.5 weeks, my lawyers sit down and say to me, given the kind of flagrant disregard of the judiciary in this moment, we can't even guarantee that a favorable ruling will keep you safe. So what do I do? So at this point, I thought, okay, if even a court ruling can still have me in jail, at this point, there's no point.
Why am I here?
So that was at 8 p.m, I think on a Sunday. By 11, I called my friend and said, listen, what time can you get to upstate New York? They said they can be there by 12. I packed what I could, drove to Canada, which is only 2.5 hours from the border, right? And then, I'm in there, I got a little blanket on over me. Anytime I hear a siren, I'm thinking this time is up. My other friend's an activist, so they're saying that, okay, if I don't get put in, like as in them, well, what we're gonna do? You just walk across, like we're making all these, You have
to prepare and it's the reality.
Exactly, thinking of everything possible scenario, only for me to get to the Canadian border and it being the most uneventful thing ever.
You're like, damn it.
I was like, they're like, oh, how long are you here for? I said, a week. Welcome to Canada.
Okay.
I was like, oh.
That's a lot of protect. That's God protect.
I appreciate. Honestly, I was like, thank God. And then I remember immediately after I tweeted, I had a statement prepared. I tweeted it. Very surreal experience, tweeting something and in 5 minutes getting a BBC News breaking news, Momodou Taal left US. It's a very surreal experience. But then after that, it was cool. Went to Cuba for 3 weeks and came back to UK.
Let's talk about Cuba, going underground.
Sorry?
No, I was going to say Cuba has been like a haven for many revolutionaries. We've seen it with Assata Shakur, who recently passed away. So how was your experience in Cuba, being underground? And also a space for you to also process the state violence that you endured and are enduring.
It was necessary, I think, because I think Cuba is such a place, even though the sanctions have like decimated that country, and it's so disgusting what the US continues to do with the blockade. But I think the people are just beautiful, and the revolution is still alive. Right. And I remember, so when I arrived to Cuba, I meet a man called Dennis, who was an Afro-Cuban who fought in the Angolan liberation struggle. And he said he heard about my case. And the first thing he says to me is, "You're safe here in Cuba." And I feel like, honestly, that like all the tension and stress that I was holding in my body just melted away in that moment. And I had a great time in Havana. Havana is beautiful. So it was like...
It's on my list.
Yeah, and again, it's like, being in a place in America where like the question of resistance is so challenged. Not challenged, well, you can be criminally prosecuted. Versus being in Cuba where that's not even a question. Of course you're gonna stand up and fight for your life. Like it's not even a question, right?
It's a necessity.
It's a necessity, right? It's like that's that Fanonian understanding of in the chapters of Wretched of the Earth concerning violence, right? It's not like violence for violence sake, but it's violence to reassert your humanity, right? So for me, the Cuba was just like a place I felt like I just decompressed. I kind of didn't go on my phone as much. It was just nice to be out of the United States of America.
I love learning about people's ideological development and journeys. Did Cuba like reshape your politics?
I'm not sure about reshape, but I think it definitely, like, I doubled down. I doubled down more so now. I'm like, whereas before, I've always been someone that doesn't like, I say what I want to say, but I say in a very like, I don't know, media way, like, I'm not media trained, but I say in ways that it pushes the boundary, but it just stops short of like, maybe like, please turn up your door. But I think now, when I left the United States, I'm like, okay, the gloves are off now. I'm going to say whatever I want, however I want to say it.
It's so important, especially when we're at a time where like liberalism is applauded, right? And like liberals are getting mass funding. Liberals are told that like this is what revolution looks like, this is what resistance look like. And actually we need revolutionary organizations that are embedded in scientific socialism, that are Marxist Leninist. So it's really important what you do. You have a way, which I've learned so much from, the Malcolm Effect podcast. Can you talk a little bit about like the creation of the Malcolm Effect podcast?
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you so much for the support. It really means a lot. With the Malcolm Effect podcast, I think I started in 2020. And literally it was COVID time. I was at home and I was like, okay, let me look at podcasts, right? And again, this is, I don't want to sound like Jaden Smith and be like, you lot don't talk about politics. I'm like, I love frivolous stuff as well. Like I love a good Real Housewife of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Right? Like
I
love a Real Housewife of Atlanta. I love a good Love Island sometimes.
Yeah, I love that.
That's how I think people think like have this image of like, no, I don't just read books, right? Like,
I
have fun.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there's so many podcasts, especially in the UK, from the Black communities that are entertainment heavy.
Yeah.
This is not a critique. I'm just saying what an observable fact.
Yeah.
So and the ones that are semi-political are all about Black excellence, right? It's all about like, how to become a better capitalist, how to become a self-made person, right? Entrepreneur. So that was just my experience. I thought, okay, we need something that's a bit political, but accessible. Yeah. And that was just and again, I say that my podcast is just it's me doing my learning in public. Yeah. And it's my own diary of my intellectual journey in the hopes that other people find it beneficial. Yeah.
Could you give us some of like a summary of like some episodes, like 2 episodes that comes up to like you think about?
That's 2, I've got bangers though.
We can do 3.
I have bangers.
You actually do. And for people who haven't listened to it, should definitely. What platforms is
it's on most YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I think most streaming platforms. Okay, ones that stand out to me. There's one on Pan-Africanism by Professor Siba Grovegi, who's my dissertation chair. He's from Guinea, and we kind of break down what Pan-Africanism is. And a takeaway from the episode, he says that, again, these leaders, the first generation of anti-colonial leaders, the Nkrumahs, the Nassers, the Sekou Tourés, the Lumumbas, Sankaras, were imperfect. Deeply flawed people. And they made mistakes. But fundamentally, what's different today from African leadership is with all their mistakes that they made, there was a true commitment to African liberation and to African people, which is missing today, a lot of leadership. Another episode, people might find it's funny because me and this professor have disagreed a lot of times, but my episode with Judith Butler, I really enjoyed. Not for probably the reason why people think, it's because that Judith Butler is someone who is, an A1 academic in their field, right? They are cited extensively, right? And they're an authority on gender. But hearing Judith Butler even be unsure about some of their positions was eye-opening for me, because I think that's a true academic.
Yeah.
If you have complete conviction that you're always right on everything, I kind of question that. So not to say that Judith Butler doesn't know what they're talking about, but more to say that they're still wrestling with their ideas. Yeah. And that was quite apparent to me, and I really appreciated that.
It's very important. Cabral, he was a revolutionary leader in Cape Verde. He talked a lot about like self-criticisms and organizational criticism. And I feel like right now there's a shyness from organizers and like movements and organizations around the self-criticisms and organizational criticisms. So I think it's also really important, also the humility that comes with to be like, I made a mistake. Actually, my politics 5 years ago isn't the same as today, which is beautiful to witness. And we saw that with Malcolm X, right? With his journey in the Nation of Islam to the last couple of years of his life, which is really important. So yeah, it's thank you for bringing that.
Thank you.
And you spoke a little bit about spirituality and the Quran, and also this moment where you were in the hiding and it was Ramadan, right? Yeah. Which is also really important to touch on, where like a lot of times spirituality and organizing is kind of like separated. So I want to talk a little bit about your connection to the Quran and organizing.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the question. I think, again, you know, people often have this question, how do you reconcile your faith with being a Marxist? And Marxism is a materialist understanding of the world, and he doesn't have any time for metaphysics. And, you know, I've heard this stuff time and time again. All the kind of often miscited, because they never quote the whole thing. Religion is the opiate of the masses, Marx said, and how can you be religious, etc. Again, for me, I think that I don't find them in contradiction. I don't find them at odds. I don't take Marx to be a prophet. I take Marx to be someone who was a genius who analyzed capitalism, and we haven't got a better critique of capitalism, right? And again, do we live in a capitalist world or not? We do, right?
Yeah.
But do I think adopting a Marxist position precludes you from being spiritual or Muslim? No, because I think what I get from spirituality is the reason why I engage in politics, right? My ethical commitment comes from my understanding of the Quran, right? With how many countless of verses where Allah speaks in the Quran, be a witness for justice, right? One of Allah's names, Al-Adl, which is the just one, right? Justice is throughout the Quran, right? And grotesque wealth inequality is condemned, usury is condemned, right? We know that we're far more rewarded in Islam when we do things as a community. Ramadan, for example, why is it that you give the zakat al-fitr, which is the charity you give before the Eid prayer? Why? You give it because you don't want the poor people to go without on Eid. Right? I don't know how you can read these things in the Quran and feel like, I see the socialism in these things.
And be like, oh, I need to be a capitalist.
Exactly. But I think for me, the Quran is like my anchor, my bedrock. I spent 7 years in Egypt studying the Quran, studying Arabic as well. And again, the Quran is never a book that you're finished with, right? You keep, every time I read it, something new pops out. But I think for me, just to kind of broadly sum up, that my ethical commitments and the reason why I engage in politics is because I'm a Muslim.
It again is that important. I don't think I would be able to do all of the organizing I do without my connection to Islam.
Facts.
And without reading the Quran and it talking to us about like the duty of like justice and organizing, and also not standing with the oppressor, actually standing with the oppressed. You have this ability to redistribute education in a way to be like, actually, how do we summarize, not even summarize, let me reword that. You have an ability to get the masses and like the people to journey with you. And you've done this with Voxuma, which is a beautiful platform that's been recently created. Could you talk a little bit about what is Voxuma and why it was created?
Yeah, Voxuma, funny enough, is a great segue because it was literally created to, because I feel people often have this phrase, right? I'm too Muslim for the leftists, and I'm too leftist for the Muslims, right? So what is that kind of healthy middle where like, I don't want to abandon my faith to do politics, nor do I want to abandon my socialist orientation to be a Muslim, right? And I don't believe that they are at loggerheads with each other. I do think there's not a reconciliation of things like, oh, let's try and put them together, but no, you can be both. So Voxuma was literally born out of a conversation with a friend, and I have to say on record, whilst I'm the founder of Voxuma, majority of the work is not done by me, right? A lot of the kind of, I guess, the voice of Voxuma is definitely like, I have play a role in that, but the day-to-day work is done by a brilliant team, and I think I have to shout them out.
That's
right. That's very important. But secondly, it was a conversation where I'm like, where is the space for Muslims who want to be politically engaged, who are not liberal? And that was the Voxuma creation, and that was literally. And I think I didn't know how well it would do, but it's actually been like a bedrock for so many people. I receive messages weekly saying like, oh, I became Muslim because of Voxuma, right? I hear that a lot, or like, I was waiting for a space like this, right? And again, it's like, this is not attributed to me. This is obviously like, I truly attribute everything to Allah. As Malcolm X said, that all the mistakes have been mine, and all praises due to Allah.
It's important. And also, again, it's this idea of like, the work that we do isn't individual, like it's a collective, even for people who are not seen, who's not named. So it's also really important. And there's a lot of revolutionaries who are not named, right? But we're able to like build a revolutionary organization that we know of. You spoke about the connection between Islam and anti-imperialism and like the role that Voxuma plays. Is there any like a particular scholar or someone that you look up to that like people hearing this for the first time can like research?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, Sheikh Khalid Abul Fadl, who runs the Usuli Institute, I think his approach to Islam is very much centered around what does it mean to be a Muslim in this time, whose primary concern is justice and social transformation. So I highly recommend people checking out his work, and it's a whole team. But also as well, I think it's about how do you make the Quran legible in this time?
Yep.
And I think oftentimes that people don't think that's an important question. It's like, oh, it was done 1400 years ago. No, 1400 years ago is a long time ago, and the ways in which we think are very different today.
Yeah.
So how do we continue to make the Quran legible in this time is, for me, what I think Sheikh Khalid project is about.
You spoke about Pan-Africanism and historically and like anti-colonial, like revolutionary leaders. When we think about Pan-Africanism today and the reimagination of Pan-Africanism and the connection to anti-imperialism, how do you reimagine Pan-Africanism?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think fundamentally it's a question of what are our emancipatory horizons? That's my first question, right? And I think oftentimes on the left we hear this thing of like, I think even though we can accept there's a declining US empire, there's no guarantee that's going to be a socialist future.
Yeah.
As we often say, socialism or barbarism. Those are the options, right?
Yeah.
Will America allow for an emergence of a multipolar world? Or would it rather see the world burnt? And so far, all indications look like it would rather see the world burnt. So I guess in such precarity and vulnerability, if we don't unite as African people,
Yeah.
we will be swept away, or we'll be embroiled in a new Cold War logic, and you have to pick a side.
Yeah.
Right? When we know we have histories of non-aligned movements. So for me, Pan-Africanism in the going forward would be a recognition that the world needs Africa.
Yep.
The future of the world is Africa, given its youngest population in the world as a continent, right? The untapped resources are in abundance there.
Yeah.
So again, what does it look like going forward? We know there's going to be so much interest in Africa in the future because of the labor shortages as well, and also how many people are in the continent. So given that we have all the material resources for development, etc., on the continent, it's going to be a battleground.
Yep.
Now, who shapes that battleground is the question. Pan-Africanism is saying, I believe in self-determination for African people and the African continent.
And also, who are the gravediggers of imperialism?
Exactly.
And that's really important. And Ghassan Kalafani talks about striking imperialism. So what does it mean to strike imperialism and also be Pan-Africanist and talking about African unity? So thank you so much for talking about Pan-Africanism today, for talking about Malcolm X, for actually talking about what does it mean to have political clarity in a time that tells us that like silence is better. What are the possibilities that Pan-Africanism brings to the future that we're trying to build?
I think I would say if you think of what we understand to be modernity, we have inaugurated a world in which there's a binary between the racial distinction, right, between black and white. And I think when I think of Pan-Africanism, it's fundamentally looking at the world from a vantage point of the black individual, from the black subject. Because I've always said that being black holds up a mirror to the world and says, okay, you say you believe in human rights. When you say human, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Because how do you have human rights and slavery at the same time, for example, right? Yeah. So Pan-Africanism for me is in going forward in the future is a correction of the liberal Western order.
Thank you so much. It's so important to talk about, when we talk about resistance and revolutionary struggle, we can't not talk about African unity and liberation. Absolutely. Fundamentally, it has to be at the heart of our organizing. And you're doing the work. And I hope people who are listening and viewing this searches you up, learns about all of the work that you've done, what the work that Voxuma has done, Malcolm Effect has done. And also this is a duty not just to listen, but also to act. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. As this is the Knowledge Chronicles, we're really interested in asking our guests, what does knowledge mean to you?
Oof. Okay, so the beauty of the Arabic language is that almost every word has root letters. And the root letters normally indicate a connection between the words itself. So in Arabic, the word for knowledge is aim, which is ayn, lam, mim, A-L-M. And the word for action is amal, ayn, mim, lam, just a reverse of the last two characters. So that intrinsically you understand that knowledge and action are linked, and there's no knowledge without action. And for us who are leftists, we'll say there's no knowledge without praxis.
Yeah. What are the best places that you found knowledge?
Oh, That's a good question. If I'm being honest, for me personally, it's through conversation. I find that also I love reading books, obviously, but I find throughout conversation is when you like, I don't know, you get a chance to kind of sit in dialogue with somebody and they're challenging you, they're pushing back, you're pushing back. You know, it's like it's a true dialectic.
What is the one piece of advice or knowledge that you would want people to take away from listening or viewing it?
A piece of advice from knowledge is that the paradox of knowledge is that the more you know, the more it exposes your ignorance. Because the more you study, the more you realize how much you don't know about things. So that should imbibe in people a sense of humility, and that you should always be prepared to know that you could be wrong on something. And the most important thing, not just about realizing when you are wrong, but what do you do now you have new knowledge? Are you going to be stubborn and say that I'm right or no, or I'm going to embrace this new kind of information that I've been given?
You spoke about yourself being an intellectual, and I really want to touch on what does a guerrilla intellectual look like and what does it mean?
Great question. So Walter Rodney says that the academics are the enemies of the people until proven otherwise. And that until proven otherwise is important because, again, we live in amongst we occupy institutions that are neoliberal, that the motive for knowledge production is not transformation, but commercialization of knowledge, that you now play towards writing papers for writing papers' sake, right? Or you write in obscure language that no one understands except like Derrida, for example, right? So I say that to say that a guerrilla intellectual is first and foremost, yes, whilst they may be within the academy, they're not playing to the rules of the academy, meaning that the knowledge is for the betterment of society and for transformation and for people. So for me, a guerrilla intellectual is no one probably better exemplifies that than Walter Rodney.
Yep.
Groundings with my brothers, right? He was in Jamaica, he was in Guyana, right? He was with the people, yes. And again, he's a intellectual par excellence, right? But where is he teaching? He's with the Rastafarian in Jamaica, right? He's with people saying, listen, I've got this knowledge, but I only want to impart it with you that I know it impacts you in the hope that you take it up and transform society.
Thank you so much. And it's important to have that distinction because you have the intellectuals who are in the ivory tower, who gatekeep knowledge, and then you have the guerrilla intellectual who is for the people and by the people.
And it's such a good, the last thing this is a bit shady. Last thing I would say.
We love shade.
Last thing I would say is that like I don't call myself an academic.
Yeah.
Deliberately. I've met academics and I'm just like, oh wow, you lot, like I've met academics who wake up in the morning thinking, okay, I've got an idea for a paper. I'm like, oh, I do not think like that at all. I'm like, okay, how can I better understand the world in which we live in in the hope that it helps other people and myself as well, right? So I think I like to call myself a public educator.
We love that.
Yeah.
A public educator for the people.
Yeah.
We love that. Thank you so much, Momodou, for joining the Knowledge Chronicles.
Thank you.
And just sharing in such honesty and in such humility. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
Thank you.